biomass. Like methane is, because we don't have the largest livestock resource country in Africa, we need to, yes, include livestock, methane emission in the next NDC, but still that also requires a cultural shift in the system that you rear your livestock. That means you need a lot of money also to do that. So these are the challenges that we are, when we come to, here, is there any way that we can do, come up with ambitious NDC that's implementable or investable? I don't know. That's an area that we want to hear. Again, on the capacity side, beyond the actual investment that we need, we lack systems even to track what we are implementing. We don't know how to make those projects, intervention, convert our NDC into investable projects. We don't know how to crowd in with the private sector. Is there anything that we can learn during this forum, this event, that countries have done that, from countries that have been succeeded in raising finance for their NDC too? Thank you.
Excellent questions. Actually, we are going to discuss those issues on day 3. So we will have extensive discussions on how to do implementable NDCs or how to do the financiable aspects of it. So maybe we keep in mind those issues for day 3, and we go to our colleague here. Sorry, he was first. And I finish with you.
Thank you. Sorry, I will not take a lot of time. I just want to mention that these things, I'm glad we are having this conversation, because this is exactly what we are trying to do as the African Technology Policy Studies Network, ATPS. We are already in some of the countries, except Liberia, which we tried to get in touch, but we couldn't. Because we needed to get letters of no objection from each ministry that is involved in NDC implementation. We tried so much. So we replaced Liberia with Sierra Leone. However, what we have developed is a universal tool that can be able to look at all these components. We are talking about governance, we are talking about MRV, we are talking about mitigation, adaptation, financing, and technology transfer. We already have those tools. And currently, for your information, Nigeria, Ethiopia, and Ghana, we have Cote d'Ivoire, Kenya, Uganda, Tanzania, Namibia, Zambia, Zimbabwe. All the 3 regions, we have already started collecting data. So we have already have focal persons that we have trained. So they are collecting data to look at how they have implemented their NDC2, so that we can be able to inform NDC3. So it is something that is ongoing, and we expect that by the end of October, we should be having data that we can be able to verify and look at that and engage with stakeholders to confirm that this is what is. And then use that to develop indexes that will be able to show you whether you did your targets that you had in NDC2 were lower or higher based on your capacity to be able to implement. That will be informed by the kind of progress you've made over the years to implement whatever you had set as a target. So that when you come to NDC3, you should be able to know exactly up to what level you can be able to achieve. So this is something that we want to do, and I wish we had these connections before. Maybe it could have been better, but it is not too late. We are still there. They will come to your offices. We have a team already on the ground, maybe in your ministries. So we are trying to get all this information, and they are, of course, developed in a form of indicators that can be measurable, and we can be able to use that to rate performance for each component. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Please go ahead. For the interest of time, I'm not going to comment, but we have our rapporteurs that you will hear from them. what we discuss in these 3 thematic tables. Go ahead.
Okay, thanks a lot for the presentation and for all the speakers that have gone before. I would like just to point out some, to add some light on what is happening in Kenya in terms of implementation of NDC, and it's largely about the institutional framework for implementing the NDCs. In Kenya, we have a Climate Change Act, and that Climate Change Act has structures defined at every level of government, both at the national and at the county level. At the national level, we have the APEX, which is the National Climate Change Council, that is chaired by His Excellency the President. And the Act also designates that each and every ministry should have a climate change unit with the responsibility of pointing out the strategies that are in their specific sectors to implement climate change intervention. And also there is an express requirement of reporting to the Climate Change Directorate. Now the Act establishes the Climate Change Directorate, which is the secretariat to the Climate Change Council that is being chaired by the President. So when it comes to implementing the institutional framework for implementing, I think the strongest one is one that is anchored in law. And for Kenya, we have that. And we are in the process of implementing it. We have made steps. And even when it comes to reporting, each and every unit is required to reporting. So to report on all the interventions that are being done in specific, in the specific ministries with respect to how they are contributing towards climate change targets, including the NDC targets. Yeah, I think I rest my case there. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kenya. Another country to learn from. A very nice, let's say, integrating climate change into different line ministries and therefore to the sectors, giving the transversal responsibility to these entities and sectors. That's from me. Thank you very much for participating. I really enjoyed this session, even though it was only me. We were supposed to be more. But I hope that you have learned from each other on how to navigate all these challenges. And I hand over back to Romeo for our final session. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I think we need a bit of support to get others back here. I hear that the Francophone colleagues are still in elaborations up there, but they're coming down in a couple of minutes. So my suggestion would be stay in the room, and I try, maybe with some help of my colleagues, to herd them in. I'm putting them under pressure so that we can, number one, wrap up and hear from the rapporteurs quickly the punching lines of today, and then we close. Are you good with that? Okay. Bienvenue à la francophonie. Please take your seats. Prenez place, s'il vous plaît. I promise we will come to a close in hopefully 15 to 20 minutes. Please take your seats, and we should start. And the idea of this session here is, and we do this back to back with some conclusions. I don't know, is l'interprétation, ça encore fonctionne? Oui? Okay. So first of all, thank you so much for having the momentum for discussing even 1 hour longer than we planned for. I think there was a contingency built in, but I also think this day was long, and you're all ready for a well-deserved early evening. I would like to now call on the rapporteurs of the 3 groups from thematic table 1, aligning NDCs with relevant national policy frameworks. Then the table 2, mobilizing and leveraging means of implementation. And then the monitoring and tracking progress of NDC ambition and implementation, to be ready to quickly give us the 3-4 punching lines and takeaways that you have been elaborating in your groups. Sophie, help me. What do we need to do? Are all the rapporteurs in the room? One rapporteur per thematic table. All right. Voila. Yeah, we can sit in front there. That's also good. Let's do this a bit more cozy. Okay. You're the first to start?
I don't know anybody.
Table 1? Country, national policy frameworks. Can we have the mics open, please?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Good.
Thank you.
Go for it.
We had a very interesting discussion. My name is Ruth Moranya Masege. I'm the NDC in-country facilitator for Kenya under the NDC partnership. And I was rapporteuring for Table 1. That is aligning NDCs with the country development plans. And we had a very interesting session with a representation of very many, I think over 10 countries were in the room. And just to highlight the discussions, there was a very good setting of the scene by Triple GI, Caroline, and co-facilitation by Margaret. And we looked at where are we with aligning with our NDCs, what are the challenges and the gaps, what are the best practices that we can share, which sectors do we prioritize in the new NDCs, and how the NDCs mainstreamed also at the subnational level. So in the responses, I will not go into the setting the scene because of time, but in the responses, We agreed that the current NDCs are very well mainstreamed in the different development plans. We had country experiences. Liberia and Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, South Africa all say that the current NDCs are well mainstreamed into the long-term into the medium-term development plan of the country and also the long-term vision. But there's a challenge because most of these country visions are up to 2030. Some countries like Rwanda is up to 2050, and I'm not sure if it's Liberia, but there's another country that has up to 2060 something. So there are those ones that are a bit long term. So the question is for the new NDCs, how do we ensure that there's alignment of the new NDC into the country's vision, development vision? That was our takeaway question. But also we had an example from Kenya that could be copied by other countries because there are countries that have developed their long-term low-emission development strategies, and we could use that as a blueprint for visioning the NDC, the new NDC, and also for future visions for the country. We also looked at the budget processes. They've also mainstreamed climate change quite well. We had examples of Rwanda, which has started doing climate change budget tagging and ensuring that the sectors need to show how much money they've allocated for mitigation and adaptation. We have countries like Kenya as well that are have done guidelines for the county governments to ensure that their climate change, the county integrated development plans have mainstream climate change. We've also highlighted that establishment of climate change units in the Ministries of Finance and Economic Planning is very important to ensure the coordination of the mainstreaming and reporting of the NDC. Liberia, Kenya, and Rwanda are very good cases which have climate change units specifically within the Ministries of Finance and Economic Planning. And then there was an interesting question of what tools do we use, what tools are available to ensure there's a whole of government approach and all the relevant stakeholders are involved in NDC development and to ensure there's prioritization of the NDC in the government agenda. And one of the examples that was given that could be replicated is legislation, climate change legislation, with the Climate Change Act of Kenya being an example that has set governance structure for climate change and climate change duties across all levels of government. Gambia raised the issue of ensuring that we have also a structured regular reporting to avoid the last minute rush when we are doing the BTRs and the NDC updates. And this is one of the things that could be cured by climate change legislation. One of the cases that was also quite interesting was Sierra Leone that was talking about public investment in climate, making public investment climate smart by developing a policy that requires all public investments climate smart, properly mainstream from the planning phase. And also they were ensure there's gender mainstreaming in the public investment policy as an enabler for climate action. For the challenges, I'll just highlight a few. We had a challenge of how do we ensure that there's alignment of the new NDC in the development plans where long-term vision is up to 2030, I've talked about it. And then we also had a challenge of how do we ensure coherence with the national, regional, and global priorities. What we mean here is that we have 3 conventions, and there's a CBD, but we focus on just the NDCs, but they're not linked with the other 2 conventions. And then these conventions also have different reporting timelines, and this confuses the countries. We need to align and ensure there's also alignment with the regional priorities, including the AU Agenda 2063. We also had a challenge of budget allocation to implement national frameworks. For instance, after we've talked about mainstreaming, Malawi was saying they've done a very good mainstreaming framework for their 10-year Malawi implementation plan to implement their long-term Malawi 2063 plan. So the question is, where is the finance for mainstreaming this? And this was also echoed throughout the room by the other countries. We had the challenge of whole of government coordination. How do we get political buy-in, especially when we have vested mandates across different governments that are not well coordinated. You have the Ministry of Finance, you have the Ministry of Environment. Climate finance is sometimes coordinated, not in all countries, but coordinated rightfully within the Ministry of Finance. You have the NDC setting the target within Ministry of Environment. How do we ensure that the two governments are well coordinated without the politics and the challenges of personalities within the ministries? Somalia had a very good case for a challenge on how to coordinate within the different ministries and how it's impacting the implementation and tracking of their NDC. Eswatini also expressed the challenge of coordinating for the different ministries and the confusion that is caused by the different TAs, technical assistance that is vested or implemented, seconded to the different ministries. So that's also a challenge that we need to see, that we do not ask for TA that is not well communicated or well needed or will be not well integrated in government priorities. Then lastly, we had a challenge on, which was quite interesting. We are talking about a new NDCs now, and yet our current NDCs are less than 50% implemented, if they are 50%. So there's the issue of tracking. We do not have proper mechanisms to track the technical implementation of the NDCs. We do not have proper mechanisms to track the financing of the NDCs. We have a lot of institutional changes, and this also causes reorganizations within the ministries. We are not able to continue prioritizing climate change, and the capacities for climate change are very limited within the ministries. So this also makes the mainstreaming quite difficult, and ensuring there's a whole of government coordination by just a few. A very good example was Lesotho, which is, has just 6 staff, and climate change is not even a department, is a section. They say it's a section. So how do we ensure that they have enough capacity to coordinate mainstreaming and reporting? Yeah, I'll leave it at that to allow others also to give an input.
Thank you so much. Over to you, table 2. Try to be brief.
Very, very brief. So my team, my group was very precise. What we talked about is that we had 3 questions. The very first one is main challenges country face in setting and implementing economy-wide target for the NDCs. The very first one that came on board was issues of data. So we spoke about incapacity of DEX officers who have the responsibility of collecting, archiving data. We talk about weak institutions. We also talk about the barriers that we do face and the drive to collect data. Climate data is not very interesting to collect, so people doesn't really have the drive. Then we talk about the tenureship of the elected, which is also a hindrance on certain targets. We talked about the gap in, there are gaps in data collection within the various responsible entities that compromising the transparency and also the courage of the presented data. So we talk about roles of ministries like the finance ministry, which my other colleague has spoken about. So we re-emphasize the need to do collaboration within finance and planning. We also talk about the higher ambition calls for more resources within which stands in a challenge for most developing countries, that's mobilizing finance for certain ambition. We talk about the issues of NDC target setting. Countries lack the capacities, technical capacities, for example, to do national inventories. Then the second question we spoke about was strategies, tools, and framework used to monitor and evaluate the NDC progresses. Due to many indicators being tracked under the current ETF tools, it becoming a challenge to collect necessary data. Then we spoke about one best practices that the current tool is the opportunity to report a lack of capacity and also data in your BTR, which gives us the flexibility of reporting what we can in this very first BTR. So country talk about the countries are appointing focal points from various sectors which is in the ministries, departments, and agencies to ensure that there is comprehensive reporting from all other sectors. So the last question we addressed was the key gaps, challenges, opportunities, and lessons learned from the NDC 2.0. The very first one spoke about the verifying reports. Reports presented through the various tools is still a challenge, and most coordinators do not have the operational budget to do that. Then the last one is going for ambition that a balance between adaptation and mitigation is providing to be resource effective, and more countries seem to prefer this approach rather than the higher ambition that the demands are more resource focused. So this is what we spoke about. Over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. You touched already a little bit on the BTORs and the tracking and that questions. Maybe now over to the monitoring and tracking process on NDCs and ambition and implementation. Table 3, briefly on that topic to elaborate a bit further.
Hello, is it up to me now?
Yeah.
It seems like my mic is closed. Okay, thank you so much. It's true that I can speak in English, but I will mostly report in French, as we did our work in France.
Okay.
OK. Nous avons travaillé sur 3 thématiques. La première thématique était sur l'alignement des CDN et les plans de développement, notamment en ce qui concerne la mise en œuvre et les contraintes liées à la mise en œuvre de ces CDN et quels peuvent être les mécanismes à mettre en place pour pouvoir améliorer la mise en œuvre des CDN. Et nous avons bénéficié dans cette partie des travaux en groupe de l'expérience de la Climate Analytics qui a procédé au partage de son expérience sur la mobilisation, les outils utilisés pour l'évaluation des CDN, notamment l'outil Climate Action Trackers et National Pathway Explorer pour évaluer l'alignement des engagements et des trajectoires socio-économiques à court ou moyen terme avec les politiques nationales et mondiales de développement. Et une des questions clés de ce diagnostic est de savoir si les CDN sont alignés aux politiques nationales ou devraient s'aligner dans l'un sens ou dans l'autre. Et à ce titre, l'évaluation initiale a relevé que cet alignement était faible au regard de la mise en œuvre des CDN. En français, pour simple, en fait, la mise en œuvre des CDN, les CDN ne sont pas suffisamment mises en œuvre du fait du faible alignement par rapport aux politiques nationales et internationales. Et le sondage qui a été fait dans 33 pays d'Afrique a relevé que 3 facteurs principaux peuvent justifier cet état des faits. Le premier facteur, et puis il y avait des facteurs qui ont motivé et bloqué les pays dans la révision de leur CDN et les facteurs qui ont limité la mise en œuvre de ces CDN. Et la première analyse, les premiers résultats démontrent qu'au départ, le premier et le principal facteur qui a affecté la mise en œuvre des CDN est que la majorité des CDN des pays ont été révisés pour répondre aux exigences internationales et non pas nécessairement à la planification climatique. Et 20% de ces CDN sont malheureusement uniquement en phase avec les politiques nationales. Donc, les questions de financement restent également le principal facteur de limitation de la mise en œuvre des CDN pour les pays de la région Afrique. Et les observations, les questions, les commentaires qui ont été relevés par les différentes parties montrent qu'il y a le besoin d'utiliser les outils CAT, PNE dans l'élaboration des CDN pour une évaluation plus objective de la mise en œuvre des CDN et de la stratégie long terme Low Emission Development Strategy. Alors il s'agissait de pouvoir planifier sur les mêmes éléments pour pouvoir évaluer à la fin. La deuxième observation était sur la nécessité pour les CDN d'être alignés aux politiques de développement pour une meilleure appropriation par les leaders politiques sur la base des visions et des projets de société à long terme. Le prochain commentaire était la contrainte de la mise en œuvre des CDN quand les ressources à mobiliser dans la partie inconditionnelle restent indisponibles ou bien insuffisantes. Comment mettre en œuvre les CDN alors que les ressources sont indisponibles? Et en fait, il y avait la question de savoir si l'opportunité de réviser les CDN était justifiée ou bien simplement les actualiser compte tenu de la faible mise en œuvre observée actuellement. Et enfin, comment rendre compte des enjeux et des défis nouveaux dans l'alignement et l'élaboration des nouvelles CDN. Alors, nous avons eu la chance également de partager l'expérience de la CCAC en termes de la planification intégrée à travers un état des lieux des politiques existantes et l'utilisation des outils comme LIP qui permet d'intégrer à la fois l'impact des politiques dans l'atteinte des objectifs climatiques, sociaux et de santé et qui pourrait représenter une avancée essentielle pour les pays dans l'élaboration de leur 3e version des CDN. Il a été vivement recommencé de faire recommandé de faire une évaluation régionale de la contribution des pays d'Afrique à l'atteinte des objectifs d'émission au niveau global pour mieux engager les politiques dans le prochain cycle des CDN et de faire une évaluation des gaps en termes de mobilisation des financements en Afrique pour développer des mécanismes d'amélioration ou faire des propositions pour améliorer la mise en œuvre des CDN. Enfin, on a demandé d'améliorer le reporting des CDN pour mieux rendre compte des efforts nationaux en faisant une valorisation plus large des actions de développement qui contribuent à leur atteinte, même quand celles-ci ne sont pas reportées dans les CDN. La deuxième session était sur les leçons apprises et la mobilisation des ressources de mise en œuvre des CDN, du BTR et du BUR et des communications nationales. Alors, il s'agissait d'évaluer le niveau d'avancement des pays en termes d'élaboration des BTR, des communications nationales et des BUR pour l'ensemble des pays de la région qui étaient concernés. À l'issue des analyses, il ressort que la majorité des pays ont engagé ou finalisé leur 3e, 4e ou 5e communication, leur BUR et leur BTR. Et ces pays vont les soumettre pour la plupart en décembre 2024 et certains, pour des raisons diverses, vont les soumettre plus tôt en 2025. La plupart des pays ont finalisé leurs inventaires de référence. Certains ont mis en place des unités ou envisagent de mettre en place des systèmes MRV fonctionnels pour pouvoir rendre compte de ce qu'ils font comme effort au niveau pays. Les principales difficultés ou contraintes ont été principalement relatives à l'évaluation de la mise en œuvre des CDN dans le cadre du NDC tracking, notamment en ce qui concerne les données nécessaires pour renseigner des indicateurs proposés dans ce NDC tracking et les besoins urgents de renforcement des capacités sectorielles et des autres parties prenantes sur les inventaires, le renseignement des données pour renseigner les indicateurs de la mise en œuvre des CDN, ainsi que la mobilisation des ressources ont été parmi les besoins urgents présentés par les différentes parties prenantes. En ce qui concerne le financement, c'est-à-dire la 3e section, et la mise en œuvre des CDN, le premier constat a été fait est que les pays de la zone Afrique ont très peu mobilisé les ressources, surtout dans la partie inconditionnelle, pour la mise en œuvre de leurs CDN. Et cela est principalement lié à la faible capacité à élaborer les projets et à maîtriser les mécanismes de financement qui sont souvent variés et complexes, notamment les mécanismes financiers qui sont sous la CNUC ou bien d'autres mécanismes financiers existants. Alors, il a été vivement suggéré et recommandé d'améliorer la connaissance ainsi que les modalités de financement des projets, notamment en termes de production des données de référence et de leur fiabilité, de renforcer les pays en termes d'ingénierie financière nécessaire, de renforcer les besoins de planification au niveau des pays et d'améliorer l'implication de toutes les différentes parties prenantes, notamment les ministères en charge des planifications et des finances, pour une meilleure coordination de la préparation des projets et le montage financier qui va avec. Il a été également proposé de mobiliser en interne, de vérifier et de faire une évaluation de la mobilisation interne, qui parfois est très importante, mais mal connue, et qui peut pourtant aider à constituer les ressources suffisantes pour le cofinancement ou la levée des financements sur les marchés ou les mécanismes financiers internationaux du climat. Et donc, pour cette question, les parties prenantes ont une fois suggéré le besoin de renforcer les capacités des différents pays, notamment dans l'ingénierie financière climatique, dans l'élaboration des notes conceptuelles, dans la mise en place des processus d'intégration des différentes parties prenantes et surtout dans la mobilisation du secteur privé. Je vous remercie.
Très bien, merci. Now, we have, as our last rapporteur, we have Shaida, and I would like you to report on the means of implementation.
Thank you very much. I'll use the same approach as my colleague, speaking in Portuguese. I think it's nicer to see a different kind of language. And that allowed me to be very genuine and fidel to what I was discussing in our small group. No nosso grupo, estiveram só 2 países, Guiné-Bissau e Moçambique, mas as discussões foram bastante profundas. Chegamos à conclusão que tanto Guiné-Bissau como Moçambique têm características muito similares, apesar de Guiné-Bissau ser um país um pouco menor, mas chegamos à conclusão que temos algumas dificuldades em implementação e principalmente no acompanhamento da implementação das NDCs, e isso deve-se exatamente a termos sistemas um pouco fracos de MRV e não permitir um reporting contínuo. No entanto, os nossos países são países com emissões muito baixas, portanto não contribuem muito para a questão do aquecimento global, mas temos uma pressão muito grande para sermos cada vez mais ambiciosos. E isso significa para nós também termos opções de desenvolvimento econômico um bocadinho mais restritivos em questões de escolhas energéticas e outras abordagens, e isso vai, de alguma forma, condicionar as nossas decisões e as nossas opções de desenvolvimento como país. Sendo países que têm o nível demográfico em crescimento, são países jovens, que têm acentuado o número de jovens, portanto, a demanda, a procura por empregos, por sustentabilidade é bastante forte. Nós encontramos um desafio muito grande em ligar as questões relacionadas com o desenvolvimento às questões de baixas emissões. Nas nossas discussões, acabamos chegando à conclusão que, de alguma forma, as nossas NDCs têm que ser muito focadas na questão também de desenvolvimento e ser um instrumento alinhado com os principais instrumentos nacionais de desenvolvimento e, nesta ótica, ser um instrumento de planificação. Portanto, nós temos que chamar a atenção bastante, obviamente, continuando com a questão da mitigação, mas termos um bocadinho mais de foco na questão da adaptação e, principalmente, da resiliência. É muito importante transformar esse instrumento da NDC em um instrumento que vai capitalizar e responder às necessidades do país, não só de resiliência, como de responder às questões cada vez mais desafiantes de eventos climáticos extremos. Em Moçambique, que encontra-se no corredor, é um país que apresenta elevados índices de eventos climáticos extremos, tem sido um desafio constante para essa questão. E para nós, a NDC significa também um instrumento para podermos fazer cope a esse desafio que o país tem. Portanto, o alinhamento entre os planos nacionais de desenvolvimento e outros planos de governo é uma tônica bastante constante, é algo que nós não conseguimos fugir quando o foco é a elaboração da NDC 3.0. Todos os elementos como a Estratégia Nacional de Desenvolvimento, a Estratégia da Transição Energética, a Estratégia da Biodiversidade e outras são tidas como primeiro plano para que a nossa NDC realmente esteja alinhada com todos os instrumentos do país. Atualmente, nós temos uma NDC bastante condicionada ao apoio de entidades estrangeiras e nós queremos ter uma abordagem muito mais consistente em termos um balanço maior de atividades que não sejam condicionadas ao apoio estrangeiro, mas que estejam alinhadas com os instrumentos locais. Obviamente que encontramos dificuldades muito sérias em engajar, principalmente a banca comercial e o setor privado. Em primeiro plano, porque temos um setor privado relativamente fraco e embrionário, ele ainda cresce. Há uma grande dificuldade em tornarmos as ações, as intervenções que constem nas NDCs em projetos de investimento que sejam atrativos à banca comercial e ao setor privado nacional. Mas, de qualquer forma, nós temos também, tendo um país em crescimento, Moçambique tem cerca de 30 milhões de habitantes, em que cerca de 70% a 80% são jovens, então temos essa pressão muito grande em criar emprego, em criar sustentabilidade, e isso acaba afetando um bocadinho na questão do desflorestamento. No entanto, Moçambique apresenta outras oportunidades muito interessantes, que também é característica de Guiné-Bissau, que é a questão da exploração ou de trazer mais presente para as NDCs o carbono azul e o Blue Economy, que tanto tem se falado ultimamente, porque são países que têm costas largas, Guiné-Bissau tem bastante ilhas, e essa pode ser uma nova janela de oportunidade para aumentarmos as ambições. Estamos todos muito focados em criar a NDC 3.0 neste momento, com a perspectiva de apresentar no próximo ano, e estamos agora a apresentar o BUR, o BTR está em processo de desenvolvimento e a terceira comunicação nacional também, e isso torna-se um desafio. Moçambique, assim como Guiné-Bissau, tem uma grande dificuldade em reportar sobre financiamento para a área climática ou para a implementação da NDC. E isso porque muitas vezes a implementação de alguns projetos é feita de uma forma direta, pelos atores internacionais, o que não permite que o governo e o setor público possam acompanhar esse investimento e, muitas vezes, quando se faz este acompanhamento, acaba havendo uma dupla contagem e acaba sendo um valor extremamente alto tido como investimento climático e, na verdade, ele não é tão grande assim. Mas são aspectos que o Moçambique tem consciência, a Guiné-Bissau também, e que já se está a trabalhar para que se possa sanar a questão de um sistema de MRV que realmente possa ser transparente e que possa trazer informação útil para a tomada de decisão a esse respeito, como também estamos a avançar na questão da ETF, que também é um aspecto que vai melhorar bastante a questão de reporting e transparência. Chegamos à conclusão que a questão da transferência de tecnologia e o capacity building é extremamente importante. Neste caso, discutiu-se mais sobre Moçambique, dado que é um país muito longo e pelas distâncias é muito difícil ter um envolvimento do setor, principalmente subnacional. Quando é na capital costuma ser um bocado mais fácil, é onde acontece todas as coisas, mas quando é a nível subnacional, a nível dos distritos, nós encontramos um pouco mais de dificuldades e aqui nós fazemos o alinhamento com os PLAs, que são os Planos Locais de Adaptação. Adaptação e resiliência são aspectos extremamente relevantes para Moçambique, como também a questão de loss and damage, que são aspectos que Moçambique tem que levar muito em consideração, porque são os aspectos que perigam não só o desenvolvimento do país, como também acaba tendo um impacto negativo muito forte para a implementação da NDC, tornando-lhe em segundo plano. E não é esta a abordagem que Moçambique quer ter. Moçambique quer ter uma NDC que seja presente, que esteja alinhado com todos os outros planos nacionais e ela que estejam de mãos dadas, portanto, em termos de implementação e possa usar os mesmos canais de reportar a implementação desses planos para que realmente seja um instrumento utilizado para a governação e não seja apenas um documento de compromisso apenas. Eu acredito que tenha falado a maior parte das coisas. Moçambique também está no processo de elaboração da estratégia de longo prazo, LT-LED. Estamos muito expectantes que consigamos terminar em tempo útil para ser um instrumento válido para o alinhamento da NDC 3.0. Temos muita esperança que a NDC 3.0 seja realmente um instrumento de governação e não apenas um instrumento de compromisso no âmbito do Pacto de Paris, do Acordo de Paris. Muito obrigada.
Thank you so much, and I think what we heard here is pretty much a reflection of what we all try to do together, and let me summarize in 3 points. National, I would call it almost national unity, national coordination. This is not about turfs between the ministries, right? This is the environmental ministry, the finance ministry, the sectoral ministries need to work together. It's naive probably to believe that always works. Coming from Germany myself, I know how this is, especially in countries where you have complex coalition governments. Jérôme, the French are facing a similar issue here. That's one thing. But then it's also about applying and getting the right capacity there, the finance there, in order to make the wise allocation decisions on the ground and make sure that you know what you have to do and where you spend your own money best and where you try to mobilize international finance and make sure that the international community is putting the world where the mouth is and comes in to fund and finance the work that they've been doing. The work that you have been doing. And then last not least, I think when you then come to a point where you realize that the work is actually then tracked, traced down, and you see the impact in terms of not the impact on the BTR or the mitigation effects that you have and that are important, but that also show to your politicians, to the heads of governments, that there is an impact on growth, on youth employment, on health, and so forth, then we win. But this will certainly not happen tomorrow, but it's a long way to go. And I think with that, we can close our day today. I have a couple of logistical announcements. I would first of all say that those who are eligible for DSAs, they will find my colleague Mustafa and Denis outside there in the corner, who are able to then hand out to you the cards that allow you to retrieve your DSA. That's one thing. And tomorrow, I understand, we meet here and we reconvene at 9 o'clock, sharp, of course, and don't hesitate to come a bit earlier and to mingle and to prepare yourself to look into the calendars, your tasks, and so forth that you have ahead of you tomorrow, when we then discuss a little bit more around the sectoral solutions. And this is then when it also gets a little bit more like what I just said. You know, where does this hit? Where does our work hit the real world of your compatriots and the citizens in your countries? And then we take it from there. We will have a similar setup with some scene setting and panel discussion, and then we will go into groups. It was a bit of a challenge today. We are thinking now from our organizing committee a little bit to get a little bit more strict when it comes to how to come back and to report back, so that we are not going beyond half an hour late as today, where we are, I think, almost 2 hours late. But it was great fun. I had a lot of fun. And with that, any other points, Jérôme, others? What did I forget? And thank you so much for being here. Jérôme.
You didn't forget anything. It's just an additional point. Next to the DSA table, you will see 2 tables with sign-up sheets, because tomorrow, after the scene setting, we will have discussion in priority areas. There are 4 of them: water and agriculture, energy, short-lived climate pollutants, and forestry and land and other land use. So out of those 4, we will only do 2 sessions. So please sign up in the 2 sessions you would prefer to follow, to be part of, and we'll see how we're going to distribute those sessions when we have all your wishes, so to speak.
So basically we have 4 options, but we only will materialize and implement 2, no?
No, we will have still 2, you guys will only be able to follow 2 sessions. So there will be 2 rounds, 4 sessions running at the same time.
Got it.
And then a second round, 4 sessions running at the same time. Question is whether we will have one in English, one in French. We don't know yet. And you have on those sign-up sheets the possibility to express your preference, which topic out of the 4 that I just said, and in which language. And with that, we try to make the best compromise.
Excellent.
Okay.
Now I even got it. Thank you so much. Okay. Thank you so much once again. DSA registration for tomorrow, and have a good evening.